All right, welcome everybody. It is November 15th. This is the weekly Kubernetes community meeting. This is a public meeting that we have every week where we share release updates, SIG status updates from across the project, and kind of generally just sync up on what everybody is doing. Today, we are going to do a slight change than usual. We're going to have a SIG status update first from SIG service catalog, and then we're going to go in a demo where Alex is going to demo PuluMe. I hope I pronounced that right. Then we'll go into release updates, a tip of the week, and then we will finish with SIG IBM Cloud during their status update, and then some announcements around KubeCon and the usual bits around the schedule around the holiday. Please remember that this this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube and recorded and put into a YouTube archive and playlist. So please be cognizant of what you're saying. And with that, everyone ready to go? Everyone pumped up today? It's snowing here in Michigan, so I need this meeting to cheer me up. All right, with that, Carolyn, take it away. You're muted, sorry.
Okay, take two. Hi, I'm Carolyn Van Slyke, one of the chairs for SIG Service Catalog. For people who aren't aware, Service Catalog is responsible for trying to bridge the gap between when you have, say, like SaaS, like service, or like software as a service, like a MySQL database that's maybe provided by GKE, or Key Vault, or like all sorts of like various things that your cloud providers have. And they expose it through things called the Open Service Broker API. And Service Catalog knows how to talk to that and then allow you to manage all of these cloud resources directly through Kubernetes instead of having to jump back and forth between different tooling. So that's just a quick, what the heck are we? So what we did last cycle, this was for 1.12. We put out, it's kind of interesting. So you'll have a broker installed for the whole cluster that understands how to talk to, say, Azure, or understands how to talk to AWS or something like that. And because there's one thing, oftentimes it needs to make authentication decisions based on who actually made one of these Kubernetes resources. So that's finally in all the way through so that brokers can say that, sure, Sally can do something, but Bob can't. And because oftentimes, like, Kubernetes RBAC is the wrong place for us to make decisions. It's actually, we're having authorization decisions happening inside the cloud provider itself. So that's fully in. Another neat feature is the ability to have a broker that isn't cluster-wide. So that you could have a broker that's customized and tuned maybe for a bunch of devs inside of one namespace, or kind of just various, like, oftentimes I think about it as different environments have different needs, but it could be different teams need to be billed separately and go through different subscriptions and things like that. They can be broken out by namespaces and be able to talk to cloud providers and create things in different resource groups or regions and things like that. So that's pretty much completely in now, which is cool. And on the API side is GA. We also have something that kind of goes along with that, which is the ability to filter when you say install, say, the Azure Service Broker or any one of the service brokers. It kind of gives you access to everything, but you may be in a situation where it's like, I don't want my devs being able to make a really expensive service that's maybe, $500 a month or something to run. So you're able to install a service broker now and filter it to maybe just the free stuff, or only things that you've kind of vetted and are willing to let them use. So that's in there as well. And we started laying the groundwork for a new feature called service plan defaults. Again, the idea is that we're trying to remove the friction for a developer using these catalogs and these services, because oftentimes it's like, I don't really know how to provision something appropriately on GKE like Spanner, or how to get RDS provisioned appropriately with all the right, maybe like IP settings and networking and things like that. So what service plan defaults lets you do is say, I'm the cluster operator. I actually understand what we're deployed on top of, and I can put in defaults and say, actually, we need these VNets connected, and we need everyone to be able to have these backup settings on databases and all sorts of things. And then when someone creates a new instance of, say, MySQL or something like that, it gets all those defaults, and you didn't really have to know where they came from, and they can be kind of enforced from the top down. And we've also been working on our SVCat CLI to kind of catch up with all of these features. The API usually gets implemented first, and then the CLI lags just a little bit. But that's actually a really awesome thing as well, because if you are a new person to either Kubernetes or Go, we always have open issues for people to implement things in our CLI. And it's really helpful if you're trying to get involved in Kubernetes, because they're always accessible. You don't need to understand a ton. And we offer mentoring and help with our SVCat, our CLI issues. So for our next upcoming cycle, I don't know if this was announced at the last community meeting, but Jay Boyd is now a SIG chair, and Paul Morey stepped down from Red Hat. So both were at Red Hat, kind of did a little switcheroo. And Jay helped push through namespace service brokers. He's been super active. And then otherwise, like I said, we're working on our CLI. Another huge thing that honestly we've been evaluating ever since like Eric Toon asked us about this in January is how we can move off of aggregated API server and onto CRDs. Because Service Catalog was implemented way back with TPRs, actually. So we've kind of come along for the ride, and we're trying to stay with everyone. We love all the work that's happening, but I think we're still not to the point where we can switch over to CRDs, which is super sad. But we're always hoping, we're always evaluating. And then, so along that same line, because CRDs have come as far as they have, we're starting to see the model for Service Catalog show its age a little bit. CRDs are really awesome, and we'd like to be able to take advantage of them. So we're working with SIG apps to find a way to use CRDs with Service Catalog and with other things in general, like maybe an operator instead. It doesn't have to be Service Catalog, and be able to have a CRD that just says kind MySQL, kind some DNS thing, or key value store, stuff like that. Anything that could be an underlying service that your cloud provides. So we're working with them to try to be able to really ramp up the user experience for all of Kubernetes when you're trying to consume outside resources. So if you're interested in that kind of domain, what we'd really like to be able to do is write a CRD, write a resource or a manifest, and be able to use it across different platforms and not have to be subbing it out and be like, if I'm on Azure, use this. If I'm on GKA, use this. If I'm on IBM, use this. We want something that you can be able to move around a bit. Service Catalog is specific to the Open Service Broker API. It's in our charter. So that's why we're working with SIG apps and trying to find more people to get involved and make this an effort outside of SIG Service Catalog. So if this is something you're kind of interested in, being able to write it once and move it around, we got the cap open 2 days ago. Yep. And then, like I said, otherwise, we're always looking for people to contribute. We have some new chairs, but we definitely have had a lot of turnover with reviewers and members. So if you would like to get involved with Kubernetes and you're not familiar with Kubernetes, you're not familiar with Go, we welcome everybody, all skill levels, and we do help mentor and get people involved. Even if you're not if you're new to say open source, we've helped people get involved as well there. We have a milestone right now that we're working really fast towards related to the CLI. So pretty much every issue is good for new people. And we do have other ones that have a ton of really good information that explain this is the code you need to change. This is how you need to change it. Here's all the context. We have issues that will walk you through everything you need to do to get started. So we really do want more people to join us and hang out with us. And yeah, you can find us on Slack, or Slack's way more active than the mailing list, to be honest. And we have a cute little webpage too that explains what Service Catalog is. Because usually it's a little vague. Are there any questions?
And real quick, for those of you that joined after we started, we are having SIG service catalog go first due to scheduling conflicts. So you're at the right meeting if you were confused. Any questions? Just give it a second here on chat. Okay, thank you very much.
Cool, thanks.
All right, moving on. We're going to do the demo and then release updates. Alex, you have 10 minutes. Take it away.
Okay, I'm going to turn off my video just because our internet is terrible. Okay, can you all see my screen? Okay, cool. So I'm Alex. I'm going to be talking about and demoing PuluMe today. PuluMe, I'm just going to start with a couple of slides that motivate everything and then going to jump right into the code. So PuluMe is an open source toolchain for managing cloud infrastructure with code. Before I explain what that means to us, I'm going to kind of present like a motivating example. So let's suppose that you work at a company and you have a storage infrastructure team and they mandate that you use like a managed database like RDS or Cloud SQL or something. You need to reference this in a Helm chart. So what do you do? How do you actually do this? So without PuluMe, the way that you would normally do this is somebody, maybe the storage infrastructure team, would provision the actual database, maybe with Terraform. In order to get that and reference that in the Helm chart, you would have to like parse the connection string. You'd have to like get the connection string after it's initialized, parse it, interpolate it into a Kubernetes secret somehow, maybe using Go templates, and then reference that in the Helm chart, maybe using Bash. And so the core question that I have is there a way to have a more principled workflow around stuff like this, which I believe is super common, but that doesn't sacrifice the declarative nature of the Kubernetes API. Okay, so at PuluMe, I don't have time to like explain all of the things that it does, but at a high level for this example, the relevant information is that PuluMe exposes an open source SDK. That SDK exposes a programming model that is declarative in the sense that you declare a steady state that you would like the system to drive towards. The steady state declaration is built using real programming languages, so not DSLs like JSONet or like Jinja or anything like that. So we support TypeScript, JavaScript, and Python. And each SDK covers all major public clouds. So what I want to argue is that each of these things is really useful for workflows like this, and that we can have the advantages of all of them, but also keep many of the advantages of having a declarative API in Kubernetes. Okay, so basically the code demo is going to there's going to be 3 components to the code demo. So the first component is we have a JavaScript program that declares the steady state we want. The steady state we want is to create a Cosmos DB instance, which is like Azure's Mongo flavored document store. We want to like parse and reference that the connection string of that database in a Kubernetes secret, and then we want to reference that in the Helm chart. So that's the steady state that we are going to declare. We're going to use a program to build this steady state and register it with PuluMe. The PuluMe engine will create a plan, and then when we ask it to, it will execute that plan. It will execute the set of operations required to enact that plan. Okay, so if that doesn't make sense, just like interrupt me with like questions. No. So the first thing that we'll just look at some code really briefly before we look at the provisioning experience. So in this example, there are basically 3 main parts, okay? So the first part is that we are declaring with this bit of code here, the Cosmos DB instance. So we're declaring the steady state that we want for Cosmos DB. So it's like we want Mongo flavored, we want some consistency policy. We want, like some set of failover requirements. So this is basically, this is at this point when we execute this constructor, it will register with the PuluMe engine like this spec. It'll say, I want this steady state. And then PuluMe, after that, we will declare this Kubernetes secret. And this is where things start to get a little bit interesting. So you can see that we're just using, like, we're calling kates.core.v1.secret. The schema here is precisely the Kubernetes schema. We're not editorializing or creating a new API. It's literally what you would put inside a Kubernetes secret, but with one twist, which is that we have a function called parse connection string in a package called Mongo helpers. And we're referencing, you can see, what should be a computed value on the Cosmos database. So this is like a declarative specification of what we want the Cosmos DB to look like, and an exported value on that is connection string. So we can take that connection string, parse it with this, and then put it into the Kubernetes secret data. What this does is when this constructor is actually called, it will say, I want this specification, like I want you to drive towards this specification of this Kubernetes secret. And the PuluMe engine is smart enough to know that this is a dependency on the Cosmos DB instance, and so it will wait. It will put like a placeholder value in here, and then when we actually run the plan, like it will take the connection string, plug it in when it registers this resource, allowing us to parse it and put it inside the data. So there is a dependency here. It knows to provision the Cosmos DB instance first, and then the Kubernetes secret. The last bit is declaring a desired steady state for a Helm chart. What we're going to use here is like Bitnami's node, like default node application. We're going to say we don't want MongoDB to be provisioned in cluster. Instead, we want to use this external DB, and we're going to reference the name of the Mongo connection string secret. So that's how PuluMe knows that this chart takes a dependency on this connection string. So if I move to the terminal and I do, well, I'll do clear first, and I do PuluMe up, it will show me first it will show me a preview, like a plan of the set of stuff that it expects, a set of operations that it expects to do. You can see that I've already provisioned the MongoDB instance, and I've added the secret in the chart here so that only those are created because it takes a while to provision the database. If I select details here and scroll into this, we can see that these are just normal Kubernetes objects. Since the database has already been provisioned, we can see that the parse connection string has populated the data with the connection string information for the Kubernetes database. It has allocated a name to the secret, and the secret is referenced inside of the chart's values. What would be the values.yaml? Then we see that we have just a normal Kubernetes service and a normal deployment, which references that secret. So if I select yes, what will happen next is it will start. It will do those operations in a topologically sound ordering. So it knows we need to do the secret first. Now it's starting to create the chart, and you'll see that we have a fine-grained set of the process of provisioning the resources is split into like very fine-grained status messages. So we can see that the deployment initialization is rolling out. We can see when the replica sets are updating. We can see that because this is a service of type load balancer, we're waiting to allocate the IP address to the service. This can take a significant amount of time. So while we're waiting for that, I want to point one last thing out, which is that we have this notion of a thing called stack outputs, which is basically what we'll do is we'll look at the service called node out of the Helm chart. So the node Helm chart will get the service called this, and then we'll look at the status, and we'll get the ingress IP, which is like the public the public load balancer IP address that's allocated to the service. Once that is finished provisioning, I can use a command to retrieve that IP address you can see here programmatically. So it's like, this IP address here, if I do PuluMe stack output front end address, and then I pipe that to the clipboard, and then I go over to my browser and I click this, I can see that I have like a to-do application. I can put stuff in here. If I take that and I open that in a new browser, like all of this stuff is persisted, so I can acknowledge that, and then, yeah, okay. So I think I have 30 seconds left. So one thing that I do want to point out is that it does have a strong notion of like updates. So if I change the data object here and I just put some random stuff in there, one of the things that's interesting about our model is that PuluMe is intelligent enough to know that this should be triggering a update in the deployments that reference it. So when I run PuluMe up, we can see that we're actually going to replace the secret, and then that will trigger a rollout in the deployment that references it. If we look in the details, we can see the actual order of operations that happens here. We'll create a replacement with the new connection string, which is just nonsense, basically. That will trigger a change in the deployment that references it here. And then after the rollout is successful, and only after it's successful, will we delete the old version of the secret. Okay, so I think that is all the time that I have.
Yep, Alex, you have one question. I don't know, Brian, if you want to repeat it, or if the answer in the side chat was satisfactory, or.
The answer to Brian's question is we are generating this directly from the Open API spec.
Okay, thank you. What happens to unknown attributes?
Unknown.
Like if you have an older version of the schema compared to the server version.
So basically what we're doing, if I understand your question correctly, we're generating like all versions of all API objects as part of the surface, like the API surface, and then whether it's a successful deployment depends on like which API server you deploy it to. So if you deploy like V1 deployment to like a really old version of Kubernetes, like that won't work. Is that what you're asking, or?
It's similar. I was thinking about version skew in the other direction, but I'll actually follow up with you.
Sure. Yeah.
Other channels.
All right. Any other questions before we move on? All right. Thanks, Alex. I'm going to need the links to your slides. Just slack them to me later. Thank you. All Absolutely. Right. Moving on to release updates. Aish, take it away.
Yep. Cool. 1.13, we are almost nearing the home stretch. Code freeze is tomorrow, 5 p.m. PST. So the last 2 days of active development, there's a lot of enhancements that got merged yesterday, and a bunch are due to go in today. There are a handful of planned 113 items that are at risk and super tight to get in. The release team is working closely with the owners to to assess the risk and move them to 114 where possible. But as of 5 p.m. tomorrow, the master branch will close for any merges other than critical bug fixes that are directly related to 113. We also plan to cut our beta.1 on Friday. So far, CI signal looks good on master. But that said, we are seeing few failures as of this morning as a bunch of PRs merge. But we will be tracking those, and provided things are stable, we still plan to cut our beta after code freeze tomorrow. Master will reopen for 114 on 11/28, and the dates are updated in the SIG release calendar as well. We do have a few test failures / flakes. that I've listed that could potentially be beta or release blockers, depending on if they show up just a few days before the release. So the CI Signal team is actively working with the SIGs to address those flakes. So again, as usual, please consider those as priority and help us deflake them in the next 2 days if possible. The final call out is for release themes. We do have a draft of the release themes that was sent out by Mike to all the SIG leads on Monday. We want your help in filling out both the major themes and also any known issues that you want to call out in the release. There's a GitHub issue that's also listed in the release notes. So if you could leave a comment there regarding any known issue, we'll make sure that it's included in the official notes. Finally, as promised last week, we have a issue for drafting the 114 release team. Thanks to Stephen for getting the ball rolling. For those whoever's interested in volunteering / signing up other folks that you know who would love to be part of the release team, please join that issue and comment away. There are a few links there where we are trying to refine the selection process a little bit this time around. So there are a couple of PRs there. So if you want to take a look at those and read through those before volunteering, that'll be great. We'll have more updates about the 114 team itself in the upcoming community meeting. Other than that, that's it from the release team side. I'll come back with more updates next week.
Okay, and anything on point releases? Anyone on that can talk about point releases?
I added the note that 112 is planned for 26th, and I know 10.10 went out earlier this week. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for release? All right, moving on, we're going to do the contributor tip of the week. Jeff, this is you, if you're there. All right, any questions about cs.cates.io? I don't know if Dims is on, but thank you for maintaining this. He's doing that out of the kindness of his heart. All right, and with that, just a quick reminder that we do have a contributor cheat sheet. I've added the link in the notes that basically links a bunch of useful URLs and little properties across the Kubernetes namespace that might be useful for you throughout your day-to-day work, so check that out. All right. Moving on, Richard, SIG IBM Cloud.
Yes, so let me share my screen here.
Yep. And
all right. So yeah, thanks for letting us do an update here on SIG IBM Cloud. Last cycle, we really focused on just the startup activities for our SIG charter, so on. And our meetings were mainly around demos and presentations on Kubernetes and IBM Cloud. And then we did start attending these SIG cloud provider meetings. And that leads us into our plans for the upcoming cycle, is that we're starting to work towards moving our cloud provider, which right now lives behind the IBM firewall, upstream and making it part of the SIG cloud provider ecosystem. So we started our cloud provider back in Kubernetes 1.5 days, and at that time and since then, we haven't had the ability to put our cloud provider in tree. That was frozen, so we kind of monitored where the community was going with that. And I think the move from in-tree to out-of-tree providers, and it has starting to come together, and the plan is being put in place. So we are working internally right now to start that process and take us to upstream our code repo for that. So that's going to be our main focus. We'll probably not get it done this cycle. We're looking towards 1.14 to hopefully close that out. And then in the meantime, we'll continue our conformance testing and bug reporting and all these other things related to running Kubernetes and IBM Cloud. And if you do need to get a hold of us, the chairs are listed here. We have an overview, Slack channel, and mailing list. Mostly available on Slack is the easiest way to get a hold of us. And that is all, short and sweet. Any questions? I'll take them now. Thank you.
all right, any questions? All right, thank you very much for that. Moving on to the announcements. Let's get the KubeCon stuff out of the way. The Contributor Summit at Shanghai happened. KubeCon Shanghai is actually happening this week right now. That's why half the project is missing. Great turnout, lots of great pics on Twitter. We'll try to make sure that we're publishing lessons learned and the notes and things like that as those people return from their trip. For Seattle, Paris, I don't know if you want to say anything, or I'll just repeat the usual. Chairs and owners, if you haven't confirmed with community@kubernetes.io, KubeCon US is now completely sold out. So if you don't have a ticket or anything, you're just going to be automatically waitlisted. If you're a chair or a tech lead or something, you should have been in contact with us already. If not, it's never too late. Just reach out to us and we will see what we can do. Community meeting schedule for this meeting, just real quick. I just want to go over it again for the holidays. We will be having a meeting next week hosted by Ihor. So those of you that are not in the US celebrating that holiday can feel free to participate if you so desire. We're still going to try to do the release retro on December 6th. December 13th is going to be KubeCon, so no community meeting at all. And then for the rest of the year, we just won't have community meetings as people go on holidays. January is going to be SIG Apps, SIG UI, and SIG VMware will be due to do their updates. The steering committee would like to say they're not having a meeting next week. They'll have one just before KubeCon. SIGs, please try to have your charters in by KubeCon. Is there anyone from the steering committee that wants to reiterate this or have any other comments as far as charters or other business?
Yeah, we've divided up the SIGs amongst the steering committee members, and we've all been pinging the SIGs. I pinged about half a dozen SIGs. Recently, API Machinery has one underway. There's still a handful of SIGs left. It should be super easy now. Most SIGs fit a pretty standard mold. The template is pretty short and small. There's only maybe 1 or 2 decisions to make. If you have questions, reach out to the steering committee. It should be pretty painless.
Awesome, great. Any questions about charters? Does anybody have any questions about charters at all, actually? I see a lot of scrolling by on GitHub about charters. Just a reminder, Kubernetes office hours is next week on YouTube. Click through the link. If you haven't been paying attention, that's our live stream where we answer user questions for users live on the air. So if you're looking for a change of pace and want to sit in on one of the office hours and lend your expertise, we are always looking for more volunteers. We have a session for Europe and one for the Americas. Just click through the link. Shout outs this week. Before I get to the shout outs, does anybody else have any announcements or anything that they would like to share? Okay, real quick, let's just go through the shout outs this week. What this is, it's a channel on Slack. If you see someone going above and beyond the Call of Duty, feel free to give them a shout out there. And every week we go through and ensure that that person gets some recognition from the community. So Paris would like to shout out to Josh Burkus and the entire KubeCon Shanghai new contributor workshop team. Josh built a team and carried out the event plan for this first time sold out event in a new market to welcome contributors from this region. The event is in a few hours from this timestamp, or I think it just happened. I'm not sure. I haven't checked Twitter yet. Best of luck and have a great time. Josh would like to respond that, thank you. Let's add all the names. That's at T Pepper, Puya, Noah Abrams, Jiang Peng Zhao, at Ideal Hack, Megan Len, and Jerry Zhang. Thanks so much for that. Looking forward to seeing those pictures. NeoLit123 would like to shout out to Fabrizio Pandini for organizing the transition of phases in KubeAdmin to GA. And also thank you to all the new KubeAdmin contributors who helped us with this work at Yago. Did I get that right? Hopefully. At Yui Zhao, Wang, at Eris Libre, and at Rohit. SpitX would like to shout out to Chinopus, Zachary Sarah, and Brad Topal for organizing and running the docs translation sprint at KubeCon Shanghai. And Ivan Font would like to thank Ben the Elder and all others who worked on Kind. I wanted to give a shout out to the work done to create Kind. Nice work. I've experimented to get Kind working with multiple clusters so that we can use it to test Federation V2 with multiple clusters for Dev and CI, and I'm very impressed with it so far. I found a few issues that I stumbled across in my process of doing that, but it's not a reflection of the quality of work that's been done here. Again, thanks for the awesome work. Thanks to @Munners, @NeoLit123, @Jorge Alarcon, @Lionway, @Tao Bayer, and @Amwat. If I mispronounce your name, I apologize, but we will publish that with the notes. And with that, we're running early today. We only had 2 SIGs synced today, so any last business? Going once, going twice. All right. Happy Thursday, everybody. And those of you celebrating next week in the holiday, have a good holiday. And for the rest of you, we'll see you at KubeCon. Thank you.